So in today's video, we are going to be doing a little bit of a debugging mainly because we haven't really figured out what's wrong with our attack system. So in the previous episode, I think it was on Friday, we started working on trying to get the player to have the ability to attack either objects in the scene, like a crate that we were working on, or future enemies. So in the scene, we've now got a crate, which we added in the previous episode, and we also have that spider enemy that's walking around from point A to point B. So if in the future we're gonna want our player to actually be able to attack one of these. So the idea with the crate is, if you hadn't watched in the previous episode, is once you've attacked the crate, it's eventually going to break into pieces, and then it should, if we can get there, it should like spawn a burst of coins. So maybe like a bunch of 5 or 6 coins out of the crate once it's broken. That's the idea. And then with the enemy, the idea is to be able to attack the enemy and get rid of it out of the scene, so you don't have to deal with it. You don't have to keep avoiding and jumping over it. And yeah, so that's the idea. Now in the previous episode, let's jump into it. In the previous episode, we started working on getting our player to be able to attack it. So we started with this animation. Whenever we press our mouse button, which is the index of 0, which is the left mouse button, it goes and plays this animation, which is like an attack animation. And we also enabled the sound. So whenever we press it, we get that swoosh sound. So that's kind of cool. Now in today's episode, in the previous episode, when we programmed this, you can see that there's an error here, because when we click it over here, we wanted to attack over there, and then now we don't want it to attack anything else. So, but the problem that we're having is, because of the way it's done, when we go and walk, because we pressed the attack button, it's still registered as it's in the attack state, I guess. And then whenever we walk into the box now without pressing the attack button again, it then goes ahead and destroys the box. And that's because we pressed the attack button twice, and that's the requirement for that specific box. But that's not what we wanted to do. What we wanted to do is, when we are intersecting with our box, like here, we then want to be able to attack it once, but that's not happening. So you can see that when we attack the box while we're standing amongst it or kind of intersecting it, it doesn't let us attack it. We first have to move out of it and then back into it, and then eventually it attacks it. So that's what we're going to try and figure out in today's episode. So we're not going to be doing anything new. We're simply just going to be trying to fix that, and I don't even know if I'm going to get there. So let's start. So in our player class, we have an attack method here that we wrote in Friday's episode a couple of days ago. And this basically checks to see if we are pressing down the mouse button, then let's go and set the trigger, the animation, to play our correct animation, which is what we want. Then we also want it to play the sound, which is also what we want. That's really not that important now. What we want to try and figure out is how to get this to work when we are on top of the object that we want to attack. So before we do anything else, let's go and do this. I am going to bring on, do we have, what kind of collider do we have? We have a box, no, that's not a box. On our player, we have a polygon collider. Okay, it's not a trigger, so let's go test something. Let's bring in our player class, let's bring on a collision. Actually, I'm going to do this in a different script, just because eventually we will have multiple different collisions with our player. So let's make a completely different script, and this is going to be called player collision. Did I add that onto there? Clearly not. So let's try that again. There we go. New script, and then create an add. Oh, where's that? Here. That's here. Okay, so while that builds, let's go to our scripts here, and it should be here. Let's just put that into our scripts folder. So in this class, let's bring this here. So here, let's go and get rid of this now. The only thing we want in here is we only want this method here. Well, not this one, but on trigger. We want the on collision enter 2D. So this is the only method that we want. Now we just for testing purposes, I'm just going to go and say print collision dot game object dot name, because I want to see what we're actually colliding with. So let's go and see if it's registering that we are actually colliding with these objects. So it's only going to register or print out a name. What's this? Okay, so it's only going to print out a name for the components or the objects in the scene that have a collide on it, and this box, it should, because that has a box collider. So let's go and see. Okay, so it's not picking that up. So that's probably the start of our problem. So maybe that's because, okay, no, so they're both on the same layer. So let's go see. Did we player? I've got a bee flying around me. Okay, let's try that again. Did we save that? Player print collision dot game object dot name. I'm just going to carry on the game and see if we get anything printed out. So we do get this tile map, so it is definitely working. Now let's see, coin doesn't work. You can see every time we stand on the floor, you can see this counter going up. So let's see, player is, where is it? Where's player? Where's our tile map? Tile map is on the grid. Ordinate layer, that's in 0, that's player. Okay, tile map is on the grid and that's 0, so they're on different ones and that's still working. So why isn't this working? Just avoid our spider. So it's not picking up that we're going through a box. That's interesting. That's probably why. That's probably where our problem is. So let's go and do this. On a player, in our attack method here, this attack method is being called every frame. But there is a restriction here to only call what's in the method whenever we go and press the mouse button. So let's see. How are we going to do this? We might have to move all of this into different class. Let's see, what's that error that comes up? Does that keep coming up? Null reference exception. Object reference not set to an instance of an object. Where is it? Edge, no, edge, graph. Okay, so I don't think... I'm going to remove that. Let's go and remove that as well. And then we will attach that onto there. Why has that got a plus symbol in it? Let's go and apply all of that. Okay, that's why, maybe. Okay, not that that had anything to do with it. Let's just go and test it out again. So we still don't get any indication that we are colliding with our box. Okay. So let's see. In our create class, we have... Oh, I think I know why. Because it's not picking it up because our box is a trigger. So if we go and get rid of that, you can see that we can now collide with it and it now prints it out. So that's the reason why that wasn't working. So okay, so that's fine. We'll leave that like that. Now, that's going to be a problem, because that means we're not going to be able to detect if we are. Actually, we could actually just put a, what is it, on trigger as well, on trigger. Enter 2D. Now the problem with this is, I don't know if this is going to work, because our collider that's attached to our player is not ticked as an on trigger. So let's test that out and see. If we go through our box and it actually prints out something, okay, so that it does work. You can have both of them. I didn't know that, so that's perfect. So that might solve our problem. So let's go and see. So let's get rid of this for now. We won't get rid of the method. We'll just get rid of that because we don't really need it to print out everything. Okay, so when we go and through that box, that trigger method gets called. Now, should we move this into that class? I don't think so. Or what we can do is we can copy this and paste it in here so that we can access our player. And then, no, that's not going to work, because we need it in here, because we need to be able to detect if we are pressing the mouse button. So when we press the mouse button, we want to go and attack the player. So we're going to have to attack whatever is on the screen. In this case, it's going to be a box. So here we're saying if the game object is a player and the strength is more than 0, then we can go and attack, but only if the attack is true. So let's do this. Let's go and say if input dot get mouse button up with the same index of 0, then we can go and set attack is equal to false. So now that should allow us to not break the box. If we press the attack button, which is our mouse button here, so we can press that. Now if we go through our box, it shouldn't register that our box needs to be attacked. So that's good. So I can go and press it here. And again, it shouldn't break. That's fine. Now the only problem with this is, so that it's kind of working like that, but it's not really registering when we are on top of it. Let's go and see on our box, what's the collider like? Let's go to our scene, and then our collider is quite big. It's surrounding the entire thing, so that's fine. Info. Don't really know why that's the case. So if we attack the player, what we're going to do is we're going to go and say audio source dot play the ones which play the hit crate sound, and then deduct the strength from it. And then what else do we want to do? We want to check to see if the strength is below 0, and if it is, go and break it. Okay. Let's see. Let's try this with our spider. So on our spider class here, we have a on trigger enter here. So here, let's go and say if, what do we want to do? If we can say, where's our crate? So if the problem with this is going to be a little bit trickier, because when we collide with the spider, we're supposed to, in fact, go and deduct health from the player. So when we attack the spider, we need to touch the spider to do that. But the problem with that is, if we go to our player here, you can see that where's our attack? Where's the right one? So I'm just looking for the sword. This one of these. So you can see that there is no collider on our polygon collider. There's no collider on the sword part of the player, so that's not going to pick it up. So when we go and attack the player, our entire... That's probably the issue that we're having. How do we put a collider on our sword? When we change the animation, how do we go and put the collider on the new... How do I pause this? At the same time as the... How do I check this? I'm trying to check to see if our sword, when playing the animation, has a collider on it, because if it doesn't have a collider on it, then that's probably the reason why we can't attack the crate. Now I need a way to change the animation. Can I change it in this, in the, let's see, box to animator? No, that's the wrong one. Where is it? Player, animator, attack equals true. Okay, so here you go. You can see that our... This is probably the reason why that we are getting this error. So we can't attack our box, because when we go and attack the box... Let's just put this back. I can't do that because then... Why did I just do that? So our box needs to be false. Let's just start this again. I apologize if this episode is a mess, because this is the process of debugging things and trying to fix them. So let's see, animator box, let's go disable that and then go back into the game, because we don't want it to be broken, which is there. Now I'm just going to move the player, which is this guy. Let's just move our player over here. And also let's change the sprite back to what it was. Let's go and say idle. Now we need to find our player. Where is it? It's probably that one. Okay, so that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. That fits the collider. Now, okay, so let me explain what we're trying to do. If we play the game, you can see that... Where is it? First of all, let's pause the game. Okay, so now on our player, we can go to our animator and take the attack and play it and then pause it. So you can see that on our player, the collider does not move with the player. And this is just me guessing, so I'm not really sure if this is the problem. So let's just look it up and say, let's say Unity 2D collider not updating with animation. I don't know. How to update 2D colliders with sprite animation. So I'm just looking here on Google. Let me just bring this here. I've attached a 2D collider to my game object, but when animation is playing, the collider is not updating. Can anyone tell me how to update the collider with the animation? By your question, I assume you already know how to make an animation and add it to a controller. When editing the animation or when you're adding frames, you should notice that the record button is selected. While this is set, you can change other properties from the controller's object, which means you can adjust the collider size to fit each frame. Okay, so let's go and attempt to do that. That kind of makes sense, but that's probably going to take a while to do. So let's go do this. How are we going to do this? Let's start with the idle animation. So where's our animator? Animator, we don't need that. We need... What am I doing? Where's the animation? So Okay, so here's our player sprite. Now you can see if we move this as the thing, as that was saying, we can go and change it. So here, if we press record and then go and say edit the collider, let's go reset that. And then I'm just testing this quick. There probably is a better way to do this. That's not working because you can't, that's not changing the collider. The collider is staying the same. Okay, so that's clearly not the answer. Let's see. Where is it? Where were we? Wrong browser. Wrong one. This is where we were. Okay. You have to add Collider 2D to the game object, such as Box Collider 2D, and then on the animation pane, click the red button. Then for each frame you want to change the collider, click the Edit Collider button on the collider's component in the inspector pane and adjust it to what you need. The animation has no collider property. The collider is a component on the game object and has the animator. I didn't imagine that Unity had this problem. It's not possible to make fluid animation because the box collider or capsule collider or other that, I mean, we could do that, but that's going to take forever. No, this does not work for polygon collider. That's probably why, because we're using a polygon collider. Well, there we have it. Maybe I should just read the end of that because maybe it will have a solution in it. So I tried capsule and box collider, and those show up properly on the animation. The polygon collider only supports altering the offset. I suspect it's because points are in an inner item. Edit for anyone finding this in the future. Here's the solution I went with. Using animation events, I created a function that swaps the points of the collider based on other template colliders. Each frame also sets a property for which collider index should be referenced. Then my object has children objects, which are a disabled sprite and a polygon collider with the correct shape. Okay. Well, that's very annoying. So that's going to be a problem. I mean, there might be a different solution that we can use. I'll just have to do some research into that, which is quite annoying. Because I am going to go and... Let's see. Where's our player? Here's our player. That's our collider. Let me just go and reset this back to how it was. So that's our collider. Now, the problem is it's not really an issue with our idle animation because you can see it's only really affecting the head, which is not the biggest issue. The main problem is with the attacking. When we go and... Oh, it's too slow. When we go and... Let me try and get this. When we try and attack... Here, you can see that it's messed up. But that really shouldn't be an issue because you can see that the collider will still be on top of the box. So I'm starting to think that that's got nothing to do with it. But that is still quite an issue because that when we go and eventually want to attack the spider, when the sword gets to about this range, it's going to be in front of the player, which is what we want because we don't want the spider to attack or to be able to touch the or what am I saying? That we don't want the spider to be able to deduct health from the player if it's the sword that is touching the spider, because otherwise we can't really attack the spider. Okay, so let's figure this out. Let's see, what do we want to do? We have this problem. It's working. It just requires us to do it a lot. So I'm going to test something. Let's go and say get mouse button. What's the other option? Get mouse button. Where is it? Get mouse button. Yeah, let's try that. Get mouse button 0. And that should allow us to press the button. I'm just going to comment this out quickly. And I know this is not going to work because I think I tried it in the previous episode, or maybe just on my own. But when we play this, instead of registering a click on the frame that you press it, it should register until, yeah, so that's the problem. Because we are calling that method in the update method, it's going to call it every frame. Now, actually, let's try this. Oh, this mouse, let me just explain it. This mouse button method gets called the moment you press the mouse button until the moment you let go of it. So instead of once per frame, what am I saying? Not once per frame, but once in the frame that you click the mouse button, it's going to call it until you release it. So I'm going to move this and put this in here in our update method. And then let's just do this and see if this is going to work. So instead of it being in our attack method, we can go and do that. And I have a feeling that this is not really going to make much difference. Let's just give it a try and see. Nope. Let's try the opposite. Let's say get mouse button down 0. Then we want to attack, and then whatever we want to do in here, we can go and attack the player. We're not going to need this, and because we have already attacked the object or whatever it is, we can go and say attack to equal to false, and that's fine. Now, what I want to try and do is, if we go back to our crate, we can go and say instead of having, let's test this and I'll tell you what I'm thinking. This is not going to work, I can already tell. Okay, so that's back to normal. Okay, so that's not working, which is what I thought. So what I'm thinking now is when we go and attack an object or something in the scene, we want to attack it straight from this method. So we can go and figure out what we are colliding with at this point, and then probably just get the component off of that. So in the case of our crate, if we are in the position to attack our crate, we can go and figure out that we want to attack our crate and then access that script and then deduct the strength from the crate instead of on the crate itself detecting if we are attacking it. So I think that's probably going to be the best solution to do this. So how are we going to do this? When we attack something, it means we are... Let's try that. Let's go and say, I'm going to get rid of this from our update method because we don't really need it there. We can go and do this straight in here. So in here, let's go and say if the, if input dot get mouse button down, and it's going to be the index of 0 because it's going to be our left button. Here we can go and say player, you can spell it right, player dot attack. Is it? This needs to be a public, I think. Player dot attack. That should be like that. Okay, so that's going to be a problem. Let's do this. Let's just do this the hard way. So here we can actually, this is not the hard way. We can go, because this is attached to the same player object, we can just go and say serialize field player like that. And then instead of doing this, we can go and say player dot attack. That's fine. And then in our script or in our editor on our player, we can just go and drag that in to there. So we drag that in there. And now because that works, we can go and I'm just going to say print hit. Let's go and test this out and see. So let's see, play, actually let's check something quick. On our player collisions we can go, okay, so this should only work when we go and, nope, that's not working. All right, so that's not doing what I wanted to do. So actually, let's go and see our box. Do we still have that a trigger? Yeah, that's still a trigger. Now, let's see, print. This is just for testing because I think this is. It's not really working how I wanted it to. So I'm just going to go and test this out and see if we can go through our box and it picks it up, which it does, but it's not picking up us clicking on the screen. Okay, so that's going to be a problem. I'm going to have to go and figure why that is doing that. So we might have to have another debugging session. So probably in the next episode we won't be doing this. We'll figure out what to do, something else in the game, probably set up the health UI graphic for our player, just to get away from some debugging for a little bit. And then maybe in Friday's episode we'll come back to this to see. I'll probably end up having to find a solution for this off camera, and then I'll make a video about it and tell you how to fix it, just to save us some time. But yeah, that's gonna be it for today's episode. So thanks for watching. Sorry, this was an episode that was quite boring because it's mainly just debugging. But yeah, this is pretty much what I do when I'm not filming the videos. Just try and figure out how to make things. But yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next episode. So goodbye.